Welcome back to part two of tonight's debate. We're discussing the widening Boko Haram offensive that has become properly regional, even as a regional force made up of Chad, Niger, Nigeria and Cameroon prepares to take it on. An offensive that is to begin in the month of March, also the month when the Nigerian elections are planned. We're asking on tonight's debate what hope there is for stability in Nigeria as a result, and indeed for democracy. With my guests here tonight, Yomi Oni, who's a Nigerian freelance journalist and who joins me, as does Ashek Ibn Omar, the former Chadian Foreign Affairs Minister. Ebenezer Okpokpo is a lawyer and member of the France-Nigeria Association, and Emmanuel Liga is director of Phobos International, which is a consulting company which specializes in geopolitics and economy in Africa. I wanted to put to you, Sheikh Ibn Omar, picking up from where we left off a moment ago, this meeting will take place in N'Djamena next week. The regional force will begin looking at how it's going to take on that March ground and air offensive against Boko Haram. Some 8,500 men will be involved. What hope do you have for the regional force securing a victory over Boko Haram where national armies have failed so far?
Thank you again. One have to be realistic. Whenever there is an insurgency of that kind, it takes time, even if it is a limited one. So I do not expect a quick and easy victory. But action is necessary, of course. As far as the regional cooperation is concerned, I think that there is many loopholes because, first of all, as I said, from the beginning, the three countries particularly concerned, on the first place, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Chad, didn't work together. Worse than that, there is even a lack. There has been a lack of confidence between the three head of states. If you look at the Cameroonian of Nigerian paper, of Chadian paper, there are some very worrying, disturbing accusation against another neighboring countries. So there is a necessity to, clarify all the misunderstanding, the political ones at the first place, and to have a new doctrine, because whenever the African officials, be their military or politicians, meet to tackle this issue, the talk is always about equipment and manpower. It is not about doctrine. Or I think that the problem we are facing with Boko Haram, it is not a question of quantitative effort. It is of qualitative nature. We must move from a defensive strategy to an offensive one. If the Chadian army is somewhat successful, because the Chadians are used to this offensive kind of tactic. If this Nigerian army had appeared at some time as incompetent, it is the classical defensive tactic which did not work with that kind of insurgency.
Well, I just backing up what you've just said, a tweet from one of our viewers. 3 neighbors of Nigeria, so Niger, Chad and Cameroon, have so far demonstrated that though Boko Haram are deadly, they are not as formidable as they're made to look. So just going back to what you're saying, that already the forces outside of Nigeria are counting some successes in the fight. I'd like to put to you, Ebenezer Okpokpo, the idea that one of the things that's been said by the 3 countries, Chad, Cameroon and Niger today, is that ahead of that March offensive, what they're going to make sure to do is to try and keep Boko Haram pinned in within Nigeria's borders. Surely that means that things are just going to get worse from the point of view of Nigeria.
No, well, I don't think so. We don't share that opinion at all, because when this Boko Haram business started, we appealed to our neighbors to make sure that we have very porous borders, for example. I talked about the culture, I talked about the people, I talked about how interrelated, family relations and all that. And the Nigerian army talked about the idea of our neighbors making sure that their countries were not used as in French you say bazarière, okay?
Supply routes or...
Now, and it didn't work. Everybody closed its eyes. Our neighbors, to an extent, didn't want to intervene. I repeat, because it was considered a local problem, a local phenomenon. Boko Haram was not an international...
It was Nigeria's problem.
Exactly, yes. You see? So, rather, for Nigeria, probably, it's fortunate. But for our neighbors, it's unfortunate because Boko Haram started spreading its evil acts into neighboring Cameroon, Niger, and Chad today. And all these countries have today realized that Boko Haram wasn't, unfortunately, a Nigerian problem, but an African problem. Another difficulty you have here is that you have a cooperation between countries that have never been used to cooperating in any way militarily. You have Niger, you have Chad, and you have Cameroon. These three countries have military ties with France.
Yes,
they have military
about
pacts
very
with
different
France.
countries.
And so culturally, they have nothing to do with Nigeria. In no way have they ever before
it is the divide between
cooperated
French-speaking
in any
and
way. The only
English-speaking
country,
Africa.
for example, that probably would say, yes, we had something with Nigeria is Cameroon, who refused during the Biafra War to give a helping hand to whoever wanted Nigeria to disintegrate as a federation. And so you see that it is something new. Nigeria also, the Nigerian army, when we're talking about the Nigerian army has never fought a terrorist war before, a terrorist organization. No, it is new in our culture. We had a fight against when the federal troops took on the Biafra troops and all that. That was a conventional war. We knew where enemies were, etc., etc. And the Nigerian army did extraordinarily well. They were sent to Cameroon. They have proved beyond anything anybody could think of that they were capable of doing things. But this is new in Nigeria's history, you see. So we should not forget that fact.
Now, Emmanuel, I suppose the problem is now that given this late stage in the game, can a regional force made up of just over 8,000 men with presumably limited financial means, at any rate not endless, take on a threat that has already gone over the border, that is already substantial, that has already declared a caliphate, now that things have gone as far as they have?
Yes, I think going back to what Ebenezer said, I think what most Nigerians believe now, and probably what nobody can contest, is that the army of Nigeria that we had in the past is not really the army that we have today. We are seeing that this army is not as equipped. Everybody, officers themselves are saying it. They are not as equipped as Boko Haram are. And it's true, the army had glorious days in the past, but those are glorious days of the past. So there is something to do about the Nigerian army. If we have to get to the kind of army capable of taking offensive action, offensive strategy against Boko Haram, as Honorable Minister was saying just now. Yes, coming back to your question, they are telling us different estimates about Boko Haram's strength of being about 12,000 to 20,000. And these are troops spread across the whole of northern Nigeria, now being able to make incursions into Chad, into Niger, into Cameroon. So what that is showing us is that these troops have been positioned in small units, highly mobile and well-equipped, all across their area of operation. So it's going to be very difficult for about 8,700 men to take on this kind of force in a short time, as the Nigerian security forces have promised, 6 weeks, to eliminate, dismantle them, and have the elections in Nigeria.
Well, on that point, we have another tweet from one of our viewers. The military onslaught, they say, on Boko Haram of late is good, but why wait until this late? It seems like a war to redeem the image for the election. I'd like to go back, Yomi Oni, to what you were saying earlier. We're coming up, of course, to this crucial election. It's been pushed back. Controversially, there are fears for the future of democracy at this stage in Nigeria, expressed by none other, by the way, than the former Nigerian president only last week.
Well, I would say there are fears, well-founded and unfounded, depending on who you listen to, actually, because we have different camps and different groups struggling for the soul of Nigeria presently. But if I have to go back to the inability or the failure of the Nigerian army in actually taking care of this threat, I think it boils down to one single thing, the failure of intelligence. As we said, this is not a conventional war, but I'm sorry, we need the intelligence services of Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and Cameroon to actually work together. I agree that they are planning to bring about 8,000 men. It's not just about bringing people in. How does Boko Haram get to recruit people? We should also, apart from applying the military tactics, we should also be working on the people's minds, trying to convince people to make them see the reasons why they should. I think it may boil down to poverty. It's part of it. But how come we are not developing people such that young men prefer to join Boko Haram for, I don't know, €1,000, even less than $500, risking their lives?
It is no doubt, as you mentioned earlier, also an important problem of political will. Anna Cunningham, political will in Nigeria is at the moment distracted by the forthcoming elections.
It is possible, because Boko Haram has been in existence since 2002. And everybody had pretended one way or the other, oh, well, it's a local problem. It will go away. It will go away. But it kept spreading. And now it has peeled into Chad.
And in the meantime, inside Nigeria, Anna Cunningham in Lagos, the parties are busy electioneering. And of course, this has become one of the crucial central elements of the Nigerian election campaign. What to do about Boko Haram? The question of security has become crucial.
Well, it has. I mean, the question of security was the excuse that was given for delaying these presidential elections by 6 weeks. The independent National Electoral Commission took on the advice of various people, and the military had told them they simply couldn't secure these elections, which is interesting because usually it is actually the police who secure the elections rather than the military. But I think, you know, from both sides, I mean, from the governing PDP party with President Goodluck Jonathan seeking his re-election, you know, he has been to visit the northeast, to Maiduguri. He's talked about bolstering the troops' morale there and promising them better equipment. But from the opposition, APC, with their candidate Muhammadu Buhari, we're hearing, you know, constantly about how the current government has failed on security. So it really is central to this election. But I think that the one thing that we haven't talked about is the propaganda that is, you know, current at the moment, and it has to be questioned. You know, when we hear about this major offensive going on in the northeast and the specific timing of that, because people here are saying, well, why has it taken so long, 6 years, and they decide to get on with this just a few weeks before the elections? So, you know, many people are questioning what the politics behind all of this is.
The question of propaganda, Ebenezer Okpokpo, but also the suspicion on the part of some that the military is ever so quietly backing Goodluck Jonathan.
Well, I contested that. I was on RFE yesterday, and the question was also raised on the military backing a president. First of all, it's surprising that people would say the military is backing a president. President Goodluck Jonathan is president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Would you ever imagine a situation where the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is not backed by the army? It's not possible. He gives instructions, of course.
The suspicion, though, is that they're backing his candidacy.
No, but absolutely not. The Nigerian army is very, 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 very neutral. It has absolutely nothing to gain by backing Jonathan or backing Buhari. They have to be neutral, and they are neutral. They have come out severally to say, look, listen, it's not their role. But because of the constant accusations against them, they have come out publicly to say, that's not our role. Please be careful about things that you say. And they have called even some governors who went out of their way to make very callous statements about the role of the military in these elections. We have what we call an independent National Electoral Commission. We have what we call an Electoral Act. We have a man who was named to head that before these elections came. It is not at this dying moment, because the man took an independent independent decision.
To delay the elections?
No, it's not delaying. We have a problem. We have a problem in the sense that we have 3 states in Nigeria, 3 states in the northeast of Nigeria, where you cannot at this moment organize elections and say we would effectively protect the lives of the people who are going to vote.
Yomi, this is an interesting point. We are talking about it would have been principally voters more likely to vote for Mr. Buhari that would have been disenfranchised had the election gone ahead under the current conditions of instability.
Apart from whoever the voters would have voted for in those 3 states, I slightly disagree for the fact that the permanent voters' card were distributed in those states. How come INEC was able to distribute permanent voters' cards to people in these states, and suddenly someone now realizes that actually we can't hold an election? Now, it is very true that we have an independent National Electoral Commission, and constitutionally it is the job of the police to actually protect and ensure that the election goes as planned. But here we have the service chiefs actually saying we cannot guarantee this election, the safety of the people, and even the process of the election.
Well, of course.
Now, I'm really sorry. The issue or the question is, how come it's taking us up to, let's say, 2 weeks before the election for us to actually realize that we have the Boko Haram problem, or that we have a problem with insecurity?
It was announced only about a week before the election was due to be held on the 14th.
The military may be neutral, but the body language is actually opposite, unfortunately.
Let's have a little listen to the 2 main candidates who will be fighting it out on the election that's now to be held on March 28th.
It's better for INEC to conduct elections that we all believe that is free and fair. It's quite regrettable that they have to reschedule elections. For us who are politicians, it's more painful because that means more tension, more this, more that, more sleepless nights and meetings, endless meetings. But even with that, it's better that elections are done in a way that Nigerians will at least believe that the elections are credible.
The independence of INEC has been severely compromised. As a Nigerian and a presidential candidate in the election, I share in the disappointment and frustration of this decision. Our desire for change must surpass their desperation to hold on to power at all costs. We are clearly dealing with people who feel they can get away with placing their personal interests over those of our nation and its citizens. What is at stake is the very survival of our country.
Emmanuel Iga, listening to the 2 main candidates who are likely to vie for the presidency on March 28th, one is reminded that this is going to be, first of all, extremely acrimonious. For a fact, the most tightly fought election since the end of military rule in 1999, and possibly dangerous insofar as supporters on both sides are unlikely to accept the result, whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah, in the 2011 elections, the 2 candidates, let me say, came to grips with each other, Jonathan and Buhari. And Buhari lost. Of course, Buhari's supporters thought or felt that he was shortchanged in the vote count. And in the northern part of Nigeria, where he has most of his supporters, the people went on rampage. And in less than 3 days, over 700 people died in the riots that took place. So this is going to be a very trying moment for the democracy in Nigeria. But what I wanted to say, following what Ebenezer just said, yes, the Nigerian army may be neutral. I think majority of the Nigerian army want to be apolitical. They just want to do their job. But there may be some elements in the army, and just like Yomi said, who are not giving us the right body language. And sometimes their acts, their actions, as we have seen in some elections that took place, like in Ekiti State, where some high-ranking army officers have been alleged to have compromised the neutrality of the army, yes, Nigerians are a bit worried that not all of the army may be seeing things the way Ebenezer has just described, unfortunately.
Indeed, Ashek Ibn Omar, you and I are the non-Nigerians around this table, and looking at it from outside.
Seen from the outside, or from the near outside, if I may say, there is a real anguish about a potential crisis in Nigeria after the election, because as Mr. Ebenezer has said, none of the major parties is ready to accept defeat. And that is the crux of the problem here. And the result, the outcome of the election should be accepted by all the parties, especially by the losers. So it is very worrying for the neighboring countries, because if there is an additional crisis due to the election to the already existing crisis, Nigeria would go into turmoil, and the shock wave in the whole region will be catastrophic. So we feel that, we have the feeling that what is going on in Nigeria is directly influencing our own fate in the coming future.
Ebenezer.
Yes, you see, I think that we are very, very aware of that. And Nigerian politicians, I think in the majority, are doing all in their capacity to make sure that's avoided, a crisis is avoided. But we do not have to deny the facts and the reality on ground. I was in Nigeria in November and December when they were sharing the PVC cards. People from my place had to travel from wherever we are to the villages to go and collect the PVC cards. The same was not applicable in certain parts of Nigeria, where bulk PVC cards were given to chiefs and malams and all the rest of them to distribute to their families, because their families wouldn't come out to come and collect the cards. Underaged were given PVC cards, whereas the voting age is 18. Another problem is, we're talking about the northeast of Nigeria, for example. Why is it that we have the distribution of PVC cards more in certain crisis states than you have distributions in Lagos, for example, to cite Lagos? You have a distribution situation in Lagos where Lagos was not even up to 50%, whereas they say in certain states in the northeast of Nigeria where there is trouble, you had about 80% of voters that have collected their PVC cards. So you see, we have situations that I think INEC realized there was a big problem. And they had to stop whatever they wanted to do to make sure that those difficulties were corrected before the elections hold. We are on time given the Constitution. We are not working, or Nigeria is not working outside of its Constitution. There's a constitutional framework, and INEC will organize those elections before the 30 days or before May 20, 30 days before May 20.
So the election will happen as planned.
Of course, the election will.
Anna Cunningham, on that question, already talk of irregularities, the difficulty of organizing the election, the factors, as the former Chadian foreign minister just mentioned, that already there is not the prerequisite necessity that everyone accept that at least at the end of the election there'll be a clear winner, and that will be accepted by everyone. The fact of the threatening chaos from Boko Haram, which neighboring countries have threatened to force within Nigeria's border just in time for the election ahead of the offensive. All this creates something of a perfect storm looking ahead to that election.
I think those are the fears, certainly, that this is the beginning of a perfect storm. But let's remember that Jager, who is the head of the Independent National Electoral Commission, went before the Senate this week, and he categorically said that it would be unconstitutional for Nigeria to have another delay in this election, and that the election has to go ahead on March the 28th, because you have this 30-day period where the election has to be completed before the inauguration of the next president of Nigeria. So I think this is an incredibly anxious time for the future of democracy here in Nigeria. This is what we're hearing from people in Nigeria. And There are many concerns at the moment, and the big problem as well is that we are seeing no letup in the Boko Haram attacks. It's not just these attacks on villages and towns up in the border region, but continued suicide bomb attacks, car bomb attacks in northeastern Nigeria. So that combined, some people are saying, indeed does make the perfect storm.
Anna Cunningham, thank you very much indeed for having been with us throughout this debate live from Lagos. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for having been my guest today. We've decided we're all off to cover the Nigerian elections. We will, in any case, I hope, have a chance to meet in order to discuss things as they progress. That's the end of tonight's debate. We'll be back tomorrow night for a look at the world this week with our regular panel of journalists. I hope you'll join us then.